This video is brought to you by Envato Elements. The Baldur's Gate 3 logo is an emblem of power and a marvel of design, crafted by the masterminds at Larian Studios. As for the game itself, boasting millions of players worldwide and record-breaking sales, it's no wonder this masterpiece was crowned Game of the Year in 2023. And I'm going to teach you how to draw it using Adobe Photoshop. If you're not familiar with the arcane realms of design, don't worry. This tutorial is perfect for beginners and pros alike. I'm Jonathan Lamb with Tuts Plus, and I'll be your guide in today's epic quest. We'll also uncover interesting trivia and some lore that will have you itching to explore the Forgotten Realms all over again. So grab your dice and let's see where this adventure leads.
This is going to be a fun journey.
We'll start with the background shape, which is a Roman numeral for the number 3. Let's get started by launching Adobe Photoshop and go to File, New to open the new document window. From there, type in Baldur's Gate logo as the name for the document and set up the dimensions to pixels. For this tutorial, we'll be using a 1920 by 1080 pixel canvas. This size will allow us to fit the whole logo, which includes the font that we'll add later. Grab the pen tool and let's change the tool mode to shape and make sure that there's no color selected for the fill and stroke. And then click using the left mouse button to create your first anchor point. Create another anchor point to join the two together. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to continue creating anchor points to make the outline of our shape. If you want to make a curved line, all you need to do is click and drag with the mouse button to create a curved line. And if you want to make a corner, hold the Alt key on your keyboard, hover over the anchor point, and you'll see that the cursor changes slightly. Click on the anchor point to remove the anchor, and then we can continue to create a corner like so. So continue to create your shape and then join it to finish it off. So here's what our shape will look like once we finish creating it using the pen tool. Now I'm just going to use the direct selection tool over here and click on the blue line so you can see all the anchor points that make up the shape. We're just going to go over to the top of the screen here and fill it with a black color. And we're going to do the same with the other two shapes. Now you can also see in the layers panel here, we've put all three of these shapes in a folder called 3 Logo, just to keep things nice and tidy. By the way, this video is brought to you by Envato Elements, the largest unlimited creative subscription in the world. Get seriously creative and click on the link to learn more. So now that we have the first part of our logo done, let's take a quick break and look into some interesting facts linked to this epic logo. First up, did you know that Baldur's Gate is named after a real hero? That's right. The city's namesake, Baldur, was an explorer who sailed across the trackless sea, but instead of finding new trade routes, he stumbled upon what would become one of the most iconic locations in Dungeons and Dragons. Legend has it, Baldur's voyages took him to countless mysterious lands. His adventures on the high seas were fraught with challenges, navigating treacherous waters and encountering diverse cultures. But what truly sets Baldur apart isn't just his bravery or his quest for discovery, it's what he did upon returning home. With his newfound wealth, he didn't seek power or glory for himself, instead he invested in his community, transforming a fledgling settlement into the thriving port city of Baldur's Gate. Let's turn our focus back to crafting the logo that bears his legacy.
You can have a snack when I'm finished with you.
To create the text of the logo, we'll be using the font Dragonfire, which is a medieval-style text effect available to download from Envato Elements. Although this font is not an identical match to the original design, we can use the tools in Adobe Photoshop to make it match a little bit better. Click on the canvas to create a new text layer. So we're going to create one layer for B, another layer for G. So here we're going to create Baldur's, and down here we're going to create Gate. And we're also going to need another layer for the apostrophe. So for the B and the G, we're going to make these 400. And for the rest of the text, we're going to leave them at 240. Next, we're going to want to adjust the tracking for each of these letters individually. You can mostly eyeball this, so let's go ahead and do this for the first line here. So Baldur's, let's go ahead and highlight A, and over in the properties panel here, go to the tracking over here, and we're just going to increase this slightly so we can space out our letters. Do the same for L. Now for the R, what's interesting about this logo here is that it uses a capital R. So we're going to create a capital R here, and then we're going to have to reduce the size of this R so that it matches the rest of the letters. So I've reduced it down here to about 190. And then we're going to adjust the tracking here. And then now that we've got some space, we can go ahead and place our apostrophe over here. Do the same for the lower line here. And then we're done. We're going to select all of these text layers here. Going to go to type, and we're going to convert to shape to make all of these letters into shapes. Go over to the layer panel here, right click on that, and we're going to merge shapes so that they're all in one layer. So now that all the letters have been converted into shapes, we can use the direct selection tool over here to adjust the anchor points of all of these letters to better resemble the ones shown in the original logo. So let's go ahead and zoom in here, and we're going to use the letter A here as an example. So using the direct selection tool, we're just going to highlight this area here, press delete on the keyboard to delete them. And then once we've done that, let's go ahead and highlight these top anchor points here. And we're going to use the direct selection tool to move these up like so. And then once we've done that, all we need to do is adjust the anchor points like this to make the logo a little bit nicer. Now, if we need some more anchor points, all we need to do is use the pen tool here, and we can create another shape. And then all we need to do is just merge those shapes like that. Continue using a combination of the pen tool and the direct selection tool to manipulate the shapes of your design, and eventually your logo should look a little bit more like this. Now you can do the same for the rest of the letters. You can see that I've only made some basic adjustments to some of these. However, you can go even further if you want to match the original logo exactly. Now remember to use the pen tool to create some additional shapes. So you can see over on the G here, I've created an additional shape to connect the D with the U. Once you're happy with the way your logo looks, let's go ahead and rename this shape layer text. So recently I needed a font for a project just like this one. And if you're anything like me, finding the perfect one can become a real nightmare. Well, that's where Envato Elements comes in. With thousands of fonts available, I was able to create different variations for my project with these fonts. What I like about Envato Elements is the ability to choose different categories to refine your search. It really is a great time saver, and it helps a lot when you're dealing with the dreaded creative block.
There is something wrong with this creature.
I think we need to get you some air and perhaps have a long talk about unresolved childhood issues.
Now that our logo is taking shape, let's take another quick break and look at how Baldur's Gate 3 immerses the player with its storytelling through sophisticated use of motion capture technology. This method has been crucial in bringing the game's characters to life. The nuances of a raised eyebrow, the subtle shift of weight from one foot to the other, the flicker of emotion across a face as decisions are made. This process not only enhances the realism of a character that you interact with, but also deepens your emotional connection to the story.
Now, what do you need of Minsk?
We must first prepare some patterns that will help sell the epic gold effect that we're going for. Create a new file by going to File, New to open the new document window. Keep the units set to pixels and create a 1080 by 1080 document. Import one of the crackled paper textures from Abstract Crackled Paper Textures by dragging and dropping it directly into the file, then resizing it so that it fits the document. Press Ctrl A on the keyboard to select the whole area, then go to Edit, Define Pattern, and name it Cracks. Repeat the steps using one of the rough concrete textures from the 25 rough concrete textures and name it Concrete. You can also create more patterns to experiment with. Now we'll learn how to make 3D gold text in Photoshop. Select your letters layer in the Layers panel, right-click on the layer and choose Blending Options from the menu. Here we will begin to use and apply the 3D gold text effects. And select Bevel and Emboss, and we want the style set to Inner Bevel, the technique as Chisel Hard, the depth we want to set it to 480, the direction is up, the size is 43 pixels, and we want to make sure that the global light box here is ticked, and then we want the angle here to be 142 degrees and the altitude here to be 32 degrees. Make sure that this anti-aliased box is checked here, and from there we want to make sure that the highlight mode is set to color dodge with the color white and the opacity at 85%, and then the shadow mode is set to hard light with the color black and the opacity set to 84%. Next, let's go ahead and click on the gloss contour square here and make some changes in the contour editor. So for our first point, we want to put the input here at 4% and the output at 18%. Create a new point by clicking on the line. And for this input, we want this at 34% and an output of 67. Click again to create a new point, and we're going to create this input at 54% and the output at 33%. Create a fourth point, and then for this fourth point, we want a input of 68 and then an output of 75. Now create a fifth point, and for this fifth point, we want an input of 86 and an output of 78. And then for the final point here, we're going to click on that point and we're going to put an input of 100% and an output of 0% to bring it back down. Click OK. Next, let's go ahead and check the texture box here. And we're going to go ahead and click on this pattern, and we're going to go ahead and find the crackled pattern that we created. And then we're going to apply a scale of 81 and a depth of -14. Next, let's go ahead and add a stroke. And for this, we need the stroke size to be 2 pixels. The position is the center. Blending mode is normal, opacity at 100%, and the fill type set to gradient. Make sure the style is set to diamond and align it with the layer. And we're also going to check reverse as well. And then from here, we're going to check dither. Make sure that the angle is set to -48 degrees and the scale is set to 150%. Then we're going to click on the gradient here and we're going to create a gradient. Now for this one, we're going to create the first color stop, and for this color, we're going to create a light brown. You can see the hashtag here is 452C14. And then for the second color here is going to be a lighter brown with a color hashtag B6B68C. Next, let's add an inner shadow to this. Set the blend mode to linear dodge and the color to 700D06. Set the opacity to 100%. Uncheck the use global light box and set the angle to -90 degrees. And then we want the distance set to 5 pixels, the choke set to 80, and the size set to 5. Next, let's go ahead and add a color overlay, and we're going to set the blend mode to overlay, and we want a color which is A777 which is a golden color. Next, let's add a pattern overlay, and we're going to set the blend mode to normal, the opacity at 100%. Make sure the angle is set to 0 degrees and the scale is set to 10%. And then we're going to add one of these concrete patterns that we created earlier. Finally, let's add a drop shadow with these settings here. So the blend mode is set to multiply with a color of full black, like so. And then the opacity sets to 60%. Let's go ahead and check the use global light box here. And with the angle of 142, then put the distance here to 25, the spread to 0, the size to 40, and the noise, we'll set that to 9%. And then once you're done, click OK. Next, we want to apply the same layer styles to our background logo. So to do this, let's go ahead and right click on our text layer, and we're going to select copy layer style. Then go to each of these shapes, right click, and paste the layer style. Once you've done that, go ahead and hide the 3 logo again. So select the pen tool again, and then make sure that the fill is set to black, just so that we can easily see what these shapes look like. I'm just going to use the pen tool to create a flat top shape for our text. Now, for this, we want to make sure that this shape is set above our layers, just so that we can see what we're doing. And then we're just going to continue creating these shapes like so, just inside the edges of our letters. So continue drawing them out. And then once you're done, it should look something like this. Now you can see that I have just included these black shapes just on the inside of some of our text, but not all of the text has it. So if you go ahead and zoom in here, we can see that I've included the shape for our flat top on the right side of the A here, but I've left the left side of the A just as it is. So not all of the shape needs to have these flat tops. So you can have a play around with some of how you want the flat shape to appear. And then once you're happy with the way that your flat top looks, go ahead and select all of the shapes, right click, merge the shapes, and we're going to name these top shapes. Select the top shape layer here and go to blending options. And then over in bevel and emboss, we're going to choose a inner bevel style, chisel hard, a depth of 480 degrees, direction up, with a size of 0 pixels. Use global light again with an angle of 142 degrees and an altitude of 32 degrees. We want to check the anti-aliased box, and the same thing as before, color dodge and hard light for highlight mode and shadow mode, with 85% for the highlight and 84% for the opacity. Go to the texture options, and this time we're going to choose a scale of 29% and a depth of -110. Then over in the stroke options here, we're going to keep everything the same except for the gradient. So let's go ahead and click on the gradient here. I'm going to change a few options. Let's click on the top of our gradient bar here to create some transparency stops. So for our first location at 0, this is going to be an opacity of 0%. Then next is a location of 10, which is an opacity of 100. Over on location 19, we'll also have an opacity of 100%. Then at location 34, we want this to be 0%. Then location 40, we want this at 100%. And then next we want a location of 55, which is going to be 0%. Then a location of 67, which is going to be 100%. And then a location of 78, which is going to be 0%. And then a location of 87, which is also going to be 0%. And then for the last two color stops, which is going to be location 92 and 100, we want the opacity set at 100%. And then we're going to create some new color stops as well. So for the first color stop, this is going to be at location 10. And we're going to add a new color, which is 3A3523. The next color, which is going to be at location 40, is going to be B6AD7D. The third color is going to be on location 56, and this color is going to be C5A17E. And then for the last color stop, we're going to put this at location 78, and this color is going to be E4D9A6. Click OK to apply that. Next, we're going to add a color overlay. Make sure the blend mode is set to overlay, opacity of 100%. And this time we're going to have a new color, which is 836B42. After that, we're going to choose a gradient overlay. This time we're going to put a blend mode of screen, an opacity of 68%. Make sure the style is set to linear, angle of 135 degrees, and the scale set to 150%. When we click into the gradient here, you can see we've got opacity stops at the top and color stops at the bottom again. For the top stops here, we've got an opacity of 0% at location 0, 100 at location 10, and 24, 0 at location 34, 100 at location 42, 0 at location 51, 100 at location 67, 0 at location 86, opacity of 100 at location 92, and 100. Click OK to apply that. Go to pattern overlay and make sure that the blend mode is set to normal, opacity of 100%. Use the same concrete pattern that we did before, a scale of 10%. And then finally go over to drop shadow, and we're going to choose a blend mode of multiply with black as our color. Opacity of 0%, use global light at 142 degree angle, distance of 25 pixels, a spread of 0, and a size of 40 pixels. And then we can choose a noise of 9% for that. Click OK to apply. Once you've done that, let's go ahead and make the background logo appear again. We're going to select all three of these shapes, and let's right click and merge these shapes together. And then we're going to control click on the layer to select the shape. We're going to create a new layer here, and using a soft round brush tool, we're just going to use a black color or a dark brown color here, and we're just going to gently click behind our text like so to create some shadow. And then from here over in the layers panel, we can increase or decrease the amount of shadow that we want by changing the opacity. Now let's add some battle damage to our logo. Use the pen tool again, and we're just going to draw out some cracks like this. Just some small little crack shapes for our logo. Using the pen tool to create these small little shapes. Create these cracks for all the letters. So you can see here that I've gone ahead and done that for almost all the letters here. Just these small little cracks and shapes for our logo. And you can also do the same for our background shape as well. And then once you're happy with the way that it looks, go ahead and merge those layers together. Call it cracks. And then we're going to create a layer style for this as well. So go ahead and right click on that layer, go to blending options, and we're going to choose bevel and emboss to start with. For the bevel and emboss settings, we're going to keep the same settings as what we had before, except this time make sure that the size is set to 155 pixels and the direction is set to down. And then we're going to put a color overlay with a blend mode of normal and opacity at 100% and make the color 4A3C2A. Click OK to apply that. And you can see now we've got some nice little cracks inside our logo.
Wonderful. You want more? I'll give it to you.
Not the worst technique, priest. Good wrist movement. Lots of enthusiasm.
Now let's create the background. For this tutorial, we'll be using Dark Stone Wall Texture 15 from the Dark Wall Texture Backgrounds stock photo pack. Import it into the document by dragging and dropping it in, then resize it so that it fits the canvas. We're going to reduce the texture and the details of this background here by creating a new layer. Let's go to the fill tool, and we're just going to choose one of the colors here using the eyedropper tool and just fill it in. And then on this new layer, we're going to reduce the opacity to about 70%. Once you've done that, create a new layer again, choose a white color, choose a soft round brush, and then just click anywhere on the canvas. Press Ctrl T on the keyboard, holding Shift on the keyboard here. We're going to manipulate the shape of this round shape like that. And then once you're happy with the way that it looks, go to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. And this will create a nice cloud effect that you can use for the background. Let's go ahead and lower the opacity down to something like 55. And you can go ahead and duplicate these layers here to create more clouds or more smoke for your background, like so. And there you have it. We've not only successfully recreated the Baldur's Gate 3 logo using some cool layer styles, we've also delved into the tales that give it meaning. So thank you for joining me on this quest. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Envato Tuts Plus for more awesome tutorials. Until our paths cross again, keep exploring, keep creating, and I'll see you next time on Tuts Plus.
Thank the gods we did it! We've done it, everyone! Yes!